And
All right, so I have Jim Sheeline, Arlen McLean, Rick Humphrey,
Here.
Tom Kitson,
Present.
Larry Mamini,
Here.
Doug Farster,
Here.
Tim Bivens.
All right. You guys have the minutes from last week's meeting before you. Any additions or corrections? The only thing I mentioned to Becky was it looked like we took a break and we came back and had no executive session and adjourned, and that was the end of the meeting. And I know I got yelled at for getting back in the meeting. Let the record reflect. Sheila got yelled at for getting butt back into the meeting. Must have been important. Anyway, hearing no additions, corrections, I entertain motion to approve minutes. Moved by Kitson, seconded by Bivens. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. All right. All right. Visitors, John, do you have anything for us today? Greg, you're on the docket. Two yahoos over in the peanut gallery. Anything for us right away?
Not right away.
Us?
Yes.
Didn't you hear? I said yahoos, you two yahoos over there. All right. So no old business. We continue on with, or old business is ongoing budget discussions. And we really don't have anything right now under old business. So new business would be, we go right to 4A, committee maintenance department budget hearing, including the capital. Is Tom on yet? Okay. Greg, do you want to get started? And then when Tom gets here, we'll get him rocking and rolling too.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd like to start out with the regular maintenance budget.
hey, Greg, not to be a real pain, but would you come up here and sit at this little desk or up? We've saved it just for you, so you can actually address the committee instead of talking to their backs. Sorry.
Of course, that makes it easier for them to throw things at you too, right?
It's really for their safety. They don't like having people to their back either.
Yeah.
On the regular Lee County budget for 23, we didn't really do a lot of changes on this. We pretty much added the raises for the salary section. So that increased the budget a little bit there. We did jump up some different items like supplies a little bit because with COVID still lingering around, our supplies are still getting pretty expensive. Gas and oil is doubled, so it's starting on a way down, but we have to project what we think we're going to need for the end of the year for that. Telephone I do not have anymore. Mr. Gorski was gracious enough to take that over. Electricity line item had stayed the same, but we're running into some issues right now with electric and gas. The supply lines that are supplying our stuff to us with is almost doubled in the supply costs of getting it from their facility to our facility. So we kept it the same. We're gonna see, because the budgets came out pretty good on that for this year so far, figuring it to the middle of the year for us. So we kept that the same for right now. We did raise the gas, NICOR gas. We raised that a little bit also because our projection came out pretty good on that. Water is taking a little jump on that also. So we raised it a little bit for the water consumption. And then we have the training that we're doing with the STEP program. Yes.
Jim, where is this budget in here?
Okay, so if you go to resources and go to the under the budget let's see, that's the general, it's under general fund budget. It should be one, when you go to resources, it should be there close to the top. And then you can scroll down to what Greg's going through. Sorry, probably should have done that before we got started. No, you're all right. So, okay, so when you go to resources, fiscal year 23 budget, general fund detail. So it'd be in the top left corner. Do we have? You got it? Or you getting there? Or? Huh. Could be, because I mean, it was right there in the top left. Right there. All right. Sorry, Greg.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's below highway. Okay. Then you scroll down. Okay. Then scroll down.
Okay.
He's got his agenda up. You can keep your agenda up, guys, but I honestly, I think you ought to just focus on the resource folder where these documents are. Oh, we can't get back to it.
That's the problem.
So sorry. In the meantime, guys, I did try to pull this up on your screen now, so it's up here. And I'll try to keep up with you
I got
guys and follow along.
You're 18.
Oh. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know why, that's a bug, it locks up and. No. Yeah, now we're.
No. Everybody keep their eyes on the monitor. No. So we're down to, and I'm not sure it's on that one that she has up there, but we have training for we have $5,000 figured in a training for the STEP program for the employee learning part.
Yeah. It's under the gasoline and oil line item, Greg. But it's there.
Oh. Okay. So we have that 5,000 for the training for the STEP program we figured in, and then we also have a contractual agreement, which is a 75,000. That is your maintenance program for all the equipment for all the county facilities for rooftop units, checking boilers, all your VAV units, everything that would be included in that 75,000. That would be a per year annual fee. And then we, at that rate, we be set into that rate for 3 years. Per year, it'd be 75,000 per year. So it wouldn't change for 3 years, and then you have to reschedule it again for an upgrade on, of course, labor and materials and everything would probably be up in 3 years.
Greg, does the 75,000 include material, or is that just labor to do reviews?
That would be only labor. Any materials like filters, anything like that would be an extra. This is just labor to do the testing and keep track of it.
Okay.
which most cases, we do some of that preventative maintenance ourselves. We stock our own filters. We change all the filters in every unit once a month. So I don't think we're gonna have a lot of that. It's gonna be more something that's gonna be giving them troubles down the road, so they're for the preventative maintenance, so they're gonna change that out. If there's a bearing going out or a board or anything, they're gonna be able to hook their computer up to it, and it's gonna tell them pretty much what, they have that's giving them troubles, if they're showing any errors or anything. It's like taking your car in and they hook the computer up. These rooftops are getting the same way. They hook a laptop up to it. They run it through several different tests and everything. And if they have something that they can see that's starting to fail, they'll replace it at that time. So it's not going down on Christmas Day or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, Rick?
Yes.
On your, you talked about a little bit, the salary line item. This year we got budgeted 173,000, I think it is for this year. Next year, you're looking at about 238,000. I know that you're proposing a step program, plus there was some raises that were handed out.
Great.
Is this a combination of both, or is this?
This is the salary portion of it is just your raises that were included, and then the step program would be taken out of the 5,000 that we have proposed at the bottom.
So I'm gonna offer some insight into that, Greg, because Greg didn't plug in the salary line item number there. And we probably should step back. We're acting as though you've all are familiar with the STEP program. We did talk about it at full board last week, but to give you a little bit more details, this is an initiative that Tom Wilson wanted to change the way the maintenance department does business. So to answer your question, Rick, yes, that's a combination of guessing who might qualify for the next step in the STEP program and the annual raise, which this year is $1 per employee in Greg's budget. The $5,000 is actually just for the actual cost of training. If any of these individuals go to training, as we're encouraging them to do, then we're going to compensate them for the training. So my apologies, Greg, we plugged those numbers in after you and I talked. So I wanted to clarify that.
So, and one thing I want to also, Rick, I think you were looking at the wrong numbers. His budget request for full-time positions is 294,303.
That's how much?
294,303.
Oh, I'm sorry. I remember.
Yeah, I knew exactly when you were saying, I knew what you were doing. You were reading
Next
left to
one
right.
above there.
Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah. I apologize for that.
Yeah, Tom.
Backing up just a second, Greg, on that maintenance agreement,
Mm-hmm.
is that a preventative? I mean, do they come in so often and check?
Quarterly,
Okay. Plus if we need them.
right.
Thank you.
So I think Greg and I sat down and went through this actually before the budget was submitted to Paula in the treasurer's office for compilation. And I think we can sum up his changes in 3 key areas: the STEP program, which includes a little bit of salary and $5,000 of training; the maintenance agreement, preventative maintenance, which is a new way of doing business from how we've done it in the past. And again, this was a Tom Wilson initiative. He feels very strongly about this. And then the gas increases. Other than that, you're seeing a very similar budget to prior year. Was that a fair statement, Greg? We didn't really change a whole lot beyond that.
Yep. That's correct.
I think maybe what you might want to spend some time talking about, Greg, is actually some of those capital projects. And again, some of these are initiatives that Tom felt very strongly about, and he urged us to include in the budget, which is why we were hoping he would be here to explain to you why he felt strongly about these things, including that maintenance agreement line item of $75,000. If you guys don't have any other questions on his regular budget or those specifically those things we changed, we could probably segue to the capital.
I have one thing else that just came up yesterday that I missed, that I'd like to try to get it on our capital budget or our regular budget also, is a service program for ADS for the new Quartz building. We do not have one right now. The old one had, before I even came here, it had went away. and nobody renewed the service contract for them. It's $5,000 a year for the service contract, and they take care of any, let's say your main board goes out in that building, it's gonna be well over $100,000 to replace that. That will be included in that $5,000 a year. So, and all your smoke alarms would be included in that, and all your labor expenses. We don't have any labor expenses at all. Protection. So whenever they can't come and fix an alarm or fix something in the control board, we get charged a labor rate for that.
So Greg, you'd want to increase the maintenance agreement line item from 75 to 80,000.
Yes,
So that we're clear, I mean, they're gonna replace $100,000 piece of equipment for $5,000?
yes. Because you'll be covered under them. And they said that there's a lot of new inspections going around, that a lot of these buildings will not pass the inspections anymore, and you'll have to upgrade that panel. So it's a very good,
Is that alarm detection systems
yes,
out of Naperville or?
yeah, Naperville. Yep. We've got them in every one of our buildings. So the main one that I'm concerned about is the new Quartz building, because it's such a large system.
I've got one in my other
What,
bag.
what all is monitored? Smoke, fire?
Smoke, fire, and I think heat also. I think heat
I'm
is
sorry, what?
included. I think heat is
Oh,
included
okay,
in
that's
those
what I was
also.
wondering if it was.
Yeah.
beyond just,
I know there are some heat ones in the boiler rooms. I'm not sure if all the detectors are like that, because they're older detectors, so been there since the building was put in, so.
Greg, I think it's a great program. The question is, if we have not had this contract for a while, will they just pick us up where we are? Or will they want to do inspection, upgrade stuff before they'll?
They have just completed an inspection there, and we've got to report everything so far has tested 100% to the good. We have nothing at all that's given us problems, but it's like everything, after it gets a certain age,
Oh, yeah.
it's outdated. The panel, there's some pieces in there you can't get anymore, so
But there's no additional cost to get this upgraded.
No.
Okay.
Do you
Thank
know,
you.
do you know how many points of, that they're measuring, how many points of contact?
I'd have to look at the report. There's over, I just glanced at the front page of the report, and there was 250 detectors just on that one.
Well, the reason I ask is because I've got the same company,
Mhm.
and there's 78 monitoring points that they're covering for us, and it's $145 a quarter.
Mhm.
So
I can get that information for you,
it
because
doesn't
like I
matter,
said, I
yeah.
just got
I was
the
just
thing.
curious.
I know the first page, and it was just one section of the courthouse was 243 units that they were checking.
Are there any other fees we pay other than the maintenance fees? Do we have a monitoring fee per month?
We have to pay a monitoring fee, which is $514 a quarter for a monitoring fee. That's our annual, 1,300 for the annual fee.
Is that in the
Per year.
budget somewhere now?
Yes. Well, we're taking it out of the maintenance budget.
But isn't that equipment theirs?
It is, well,
Then that's what you pay the quarterly monitoring fee for.
monitoring fee, but this is labor. The equipment they would have to change, and that's why there's no extra fee for changing, because it is their equipment. So the panel would be changed by them, but the labor to do all that, if they change the panel, they're gonna have to, from what I understand from them, if they change the panel, they have to change every contact that they have to make up the new code for the fire departments.
John?
You know, one thing we all have to realize is 2022, and it's not 2000, and a lot of this stuff was put in. The entire technology of the HVAC units, the boilers, rooftop units has changed. In the past, we've had personnel, God bless them, who could do the work on it. Technology is now getting to the point where we can't do the work on it. So this is the reason for the maintenance agreements, because they have people that come around and tell you what's wrong and then they can fix it. Something we have to do is things progress, just have to do it that way. We've had the Rick McCulloughs and Dick Capaciuses in the past, but they are slowly going away, unfortunately. And Greg's in a box. He has to have people that can do things, and this is why you get the maintenance agreements. This is something that's been talked about now for better part of a couple of years. In the past, not only wasn't it as needed as it was, but we didn't have the money to do it. So now we have to do it, because I don't think our people can do it. And if they can do it today, they probably can't do it next year at this time. So that's, I mean, you have to go along with Mr. Wilson on this. This is just something we're gonna have to do.
Tom is on. Morning, Tom. Tom, you there?
It says he's connecting, so.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Have you priced out any other company or no?
No, I haven't, because they do every one of our buildings. I mean, I can search out for
Be a lot of
different
work. I'm
vendors.
just curious.
Yeah, I have not. You know, the nice thing is they're familiar with all the buildings and they know every nook and cranny where I didn't even know that we had sensors, because there's some in the attic of this building. I had no clue that you even had them, and you got to crawl back almost to the dome to get to them. So they're familiar with it, because they come and they have a list of all the detectors in the whole building, and they have a number and it shows and describes right where that detector is, which I'm going to try to get a copy of that from them, because like I say, there's a lot of detectors I wasn't even aware of. There's, you know, of course, there's some in the ductwork also for smoke and fire. So there's quite a few of them. Because I know the first page, like I said, I looked at, it was 243 of them. And I know that's just a scratch of the surface of how many's in that new Quartz building.
Question
Yep,
on
go
the
ahead,
water, is that the city of Dixon water, right?
Yes,
That's
and the rates have went up on that, of course, and hopefully now that we have the health department out of the old jail, our water consumption should go down quite a bit. It's not that they used a lot of water, but we're still working with old toilets and stuff, and every once in a while, somebody leaves the water running in a toilet or something that we're gonna be tearing out. We don't really wanna replace it or repair it. So that water consumption should go down. I know originally, earlier this year, we had a major leak somewhere underground going to the jail part of it. Could not find it, and we ended up shutting some valves off and getting that stopped. But it was after the fact that we used several thousand gallons of water before we caught it. There's people in and out of there yet, and somebody turns a faucet on and doesn't, you know, shut it off, or they, you know, it's hard to police when you got people going in and out of there that you're not aware of. We have fire departments and police departments and everything going in and out of that building, doing training of different sorts. And, you know, it's hard to detect that. Then thank God the city keeps monitors it better than I do. And they contact me and say, hey, you know, we looked at your flow rate and you're using a lot of water somewhere. So then we have to go back and search, and there's not very many valves on that old system there. You can isolate a lot of things off. So we're hoping once we get the asbestos done, we can eliminate a lot of the lines and just have a couple of bathrooms downstairs and maintain it that way.
Okay, any further questions on his regular budget? All right, Tom, is Tom with us now?
He came and went. I think he might be having reception problems, but I just readmitted him just now, so hopefully he's here.
Can you hear me?
There he is. Hey, Tom, good morning.
Good morning. How we doing?
We're doing well. So we just, Greg, we went ahead and got started while we were getting you hooked up. We've gone through the regular maintenance budget. Not a lot of questions there. Greg added the $5,000 for the fire alarm system service agreement. So that line item's up to $80,000. Is there anything you want to add to the, as far as the regular maintenance budget, Tom?
No, everything that we went over with Greg and Wendy the other day was fine with what we talked about.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions on the regular maintenance, let's move on to capital. I don't know, Greg or Tom, if you want to take the lead.
I can take this part of it. Boiler project going through the ARPA capital was approved. That's 209,800. The board chairman's conference room, we have 24,000. That's been approved for that. The network switching was approved for 9,626. The Quartz building elevator at the new courthouse, that was approved for 300,000. We are right now in the midst of waiting for a contract to be signed so that we can go ahead and order the parts. So we've got some pricing coming in for some minor things that, like a beam they need to install, that we have to pay for. So there's going to be a few items. I haven't got a total on everything yet. I'm waiting on that. I don't think it's going to be a grand amount. I'm guessing maybe 10,000. I don't know. What do you think, Tom, for the stuff we're going to need?
Yeah, I mean, if you had everything up, it's not going to be that much. It's incidental stuff that we were responsible for, but it was all relatively low totals for every sub. So.
Back to the boiler at the top of the page for 298. That is supposed to be starting middle of August. The boilers should be in by then, they said, and they'll be starting work on that. So I'm going to touch bases with them yet this week and see if they have an updated schedule of a start time. It's like everything else, materials just crazy right now trying to get. The asbestos removal for the old LEC is going to start August 29th. And they'll probably be in there probably a week at least.
Isn't this stuff already been approved? And
This has all
in
been approved.
2022?
Yes, it's been approved.
Can I explain that? And I know Tom doesn't have this in front of him, but I handed out 3 pieces of paper stapled together with capital information. So the first page is the capital budget, and I did add another column for ARPA, which would not be paid for out of the capital budget. It would be paid for out of the ARPA budget. The second page is the items that have been brought to ARPA and either have been approved or are planning to be approved for this next year. Some of these will probably be expensed this year. Some will probably be expensed next year, but that's what the second page is. The last page is just the capital fund currently this year, not the ARPA fund, the capital fund that has been spent so far this year.
So I think,
Oh.
Greg, for purposes of this committee, what they probably want to hear about is not so much the things we've already approved, but rather what are we looking for 2023? And so those are your HVAC systems for the new courthouse and et cetera.
Yes, the what we're searching for next year would be let's see. The original Quartz building at the new courthouse, I know it's confusing, the old boiler, we're wanting to get that approved through ARPA for a boiler replacement for that. We're gonna hopefully be seeking bids for that if it gets approved. Quartz building generator, we have a grant that we're hoping that is, we won't know till the end of August whether that's gonna be approved or not, but we have to have a $377,000 match for that grant. So we have that included in there. We have the phase one is what we're calling it, the lower unit of the old LEC. To tear out and get that set up for maintenance department to move into that area. So we're requesting for 80,000 from ARPA for that. And the old elevator controls, this one out here. There's some controls that are 69 years old, and there's parts on there that we can't even buy anymore. And Buckley, the last time it went down last month, they were working on a project. Coney was working on a project somewhere where they're tearing an old elevator like this out. That company was smart enough to stock some of the parts on their shelf, and it happened to be the part that we needed. So they were able to confiscate that and get it for us so we can get the elevator back up and running. But we need to update that system. So if it happens again, the likeliness of us finding a lucky shot like that is probably going to be pretty slim.
So the second sheet that Paula handed out there is just your ARPA requests, just so you can see of the 1.5 million that was allocated of ARPA money, where they're at with both 2022 and the 2023 that Greg just listed for you. So our total's at 1.4 at this point in time. I do think it's important to point out that Greg and Tom have asked for a quote on the elevator in this building, not just a repair, but also a potential replacement. As Tom points out, everything about the elevator is quite old, and maybe we're not being prudent to just replace some parts. So that's also out there on the radar. But right now, all we've got is a quote or a general estimate of about 90,000. We could come back and revise that based on additional information going forward. But right now, these things are all being projected to be taken out of ARPA because we still have some money left of the 1.5 that was allocated. For the items we don't have ARPA money left for, according to our projections, that's what Paula referred to under your fiscal year 2023 capital budget. And Greg's got some items under that list as well.
Is for the 2023, we have the new LEC control replacement, changing the control system that's out there to match the control system we have in all of our other buildings, so that we can monitor it and we can do a lot more options, like I can set temperatures or fan speeds, things that sometimes we need, which we can't with the current control system is out there. It was a train system, and train has control of a lot of things that if we need something done, we have to call train. They will do it, but then they send us a bill for it. So, and it's a pretty steep bill, depending on how long the time it takes for them to do it, or if they have to send somebody out. We'd like to get away from that type of system, stay with the system we have, because like I say, we can control a lot of different areas, different air qualities and different temperatures in each room with the system we have over whatever train has set up for their system out there at the new jail. I mean, we have to just go by what they have. So it gives us a little bit more freedom on our control system, and it'd be nice to have the control systems all in by one company. So, we don't have to call a different contractor out to service it.
Do we have any problems with that?
Not really. We have had a couple of problems, which when mechanical did some of the work out there, they were able to, because they had some problems when they first started up. They didn't have any air balancing done, and they did not have a lot of the boiler stuff set right. And so mechanical and Ringland Johnson came in when we first opened up that building, because there was times that when it was real cold out, we couldn't get the cell areas over 55 degrees. So we had a major problem, and we couldn't get trained to respond. Mechanical was out there trying to do stuff, but they were only able to do so much also, and train would not respond to our phone calls till it was on a holiday weekend, of course. So after the weekend, they responded back. But mechanical was very good. They were able to take some possession of the controls on that, but we still have to rely on a second person to do that.
It's hard pill to swallow on a building that we spent $18.5 million on 2 or 3 years ago, that we're looking to replace, something this sizable of an amount of money in my book.
Mhm.
I understand the convenience of being able to control things and stuff, but this building here is occupied 24/7 and
Mhm.
I don't know, this one here, I mean, listen to every request, but as far as I'm concerned, depending on how this all shakes out, whether this gets elevated to the top of the priority list or this kind of waits until the thing runs its course.
You got to keep in mind also, like you said, it's a 24/7 facility. We have prisoners in there. They have more rights than we do. If we
That's a
have to,
problem.
if we have to wait over a weekend to get the heat back on, I mean, that's, and we have to rely on that one person,
No cash bail, we won't have anybody out there.
right? But yeah, I mean, it's one or the other. I mean, if it goes down, it puts us in jeopardy because maintenance can't fix it because we don't have the, if it's a simple fix, we have to rely on another company. And if they answer the phone, they're going to fix it. If not, we're sitting there with no heat. So that's my critical area, because that one lesson that I had when I first started out there, because that facility just started when I started work here.
But
When that went down,
the
it was.
control won't actually fix it. I mean, we physically have to go out and if there's a problem, fix it, or, I mean.
No, the control will actually fix it because they can make changes on their controls right from a laptop. They won't even have to come out to our facility, but they can make the changes, and we could do the same thing. We could make the changes also and not have to have them down for all weekend waiting for them to respond.
So
If it's a part, we can get mechanical or somebody like that. But if it's a control problem, mechanical can't get into their software and neither can we. It's a fixed software. The new control system that we're putting in, anybody can get into that system and work at mechanical, any mechanical company, Hartwig, anybody can get into that system and make changes or get things up and running.
Sounds like it would have been a good to, I guess, conspire with whoever put the bid specs together to make sure we all had the same stuff, huh?
I will agree to that one.
So the other things he's got on here are the HVACs for the Quartz building, ground units and roof units.
If we want to change those, update them. If we do eventually.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead on that one, Tom?
Go ahead. And which one do you want me to hit?
The ground units for the old LEC, or actually for the new Quartz building, but it's over in the alleyway of the LEC.
Yeah. We're trying to, we've got to make room for the new, what am I trying to say, Greg? The new
Generator?
Sallyport.
Sallyport. So the generator and those compressors that are currently there are going to be moved around a little bit. But all those, we're putting together a bid list right now to take this out for bid so we can get some really good numbers. But those units are not long for the world. We were already having problems with them. Greg, have you spoke to that yet?
No, I haven't. And we have had several issues with those old ground units. They're just getting at the age where it's time for them to be replaced before we have a complete failure. But we have had a lot of fan motors, which is common because those units run 24/7. So
And again,
age
they're
of them,
made to run for 25 years and they're over the mark. And we're going to get to a point where, especially with the supply chain that we have now, replace them before we have an issue, because we're going to have an issue, and it's 20 weeks to 24 weeks lead time to get a new unit. So, and there is no such thing as getting an emergency unit anymore.
No.
So, the one thing I'd like to say to the finance committee is, everything that we're asking for is not pie in the sky. It's stuff that's going to have to be, you pay me now or pay me later type attitude, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're putting in there what we feel is an accurate depiction of what's going to happen in the upcoming year. And the way that the maintenance department has done business in the past compared to what we're trying to do now, it's two different things. We're not being wasteful with money, not that they ever were, but we're also being cognizant of the fact that we have not maintained things for exorbitant amount of time. And now all of a sudden, it looks like we're trying to spend all this money. We don't want to spend the money. It's a fact that we are going to be at the end of a gun barrel pretty soon, and then we're going to be in big trouble. And that's what I think what we're trying to do right now is pretty legitimate and really not asking for any more than we could. We could ask for, I think we could ask for a lot more, but this is what we feel we need for this year.
Questions?
So I'll just draw your attention to a couple other items that haven't been discussed yet. There's the carpet replacement. That was a philosophy or a thought process that came up a couple of years ago to just allocate in the capital budget carpet replacement without specifically identifying where it would be replaced, but just to continuously be maintaining our flooring, that we always have something in the capital budget to deal with each year at whatever area is the highest priority. And then there's also the old courthouse plaster repair. This is also something that's come forward historically because after the tuck pointing, there was a lot of conversation about doing some plaster repair in this building. So that's where that's coming from. I think that's, and Tom, unless you can think of anything else from the capital budget, we've addressed the primary items on the maintenance capital budget.
Can I make a comment about that plaster repair? Because I'm not sure who put it in there. It might have been me last year. But if there's other projects and it's not going to be given attention, and I suspect it's not, given all the other things that are going on, we should probably either kick it down the road or take it off. So.
On
just
which one?
The plaster repair.
The plaster repair for the
How
old
much do you have
courthouse.
in, how much do you have in there for the plaster repair right now?
144,000.
So depending, I mean, we're gonna be replacing pipes here pretty quick, going from the first floor all the way to the third floor. So there will be 3 areas that we're going to be fixing there. And then, depending on how you look at it, how many rooms are going to get redone or whatever, but there is a lot of efflorescence, like in the first floor, the elections office. If you pull the cabinets away from the wall, the efflorescence and all the plaster repair down the lower levels is worse than it is up above, but it needs to have attention to it. So, I would say that we could use that money if you truly wanted to start doing something. I mean, that could be used in that area.
So again, this came on the budget, not necessarily because Greg or Tom made that specific request for this year, but rather it's a carryover from the prior year following the tuck pointing. Our intention, or at least the intention of the board last year, was to move forward and start that process.
Tom.
One question. On page 2 of Paul's report, we have Quartz building elevator, $300,000. In parentheses, this is former jail. Is that one of the 2 elevators in the building? Or is it something?
I suspect that's my typo, Tom. I am so sorry about that. That really was the Quartz billing elevator. It has nothing to do with the former jail. Sorry about that.
I just wanted to clarify is all.
Oh, okay, all right.
Not looking for blame, just clarification.
No, I appreciate you clarifying, because no, that's inaccurate.
With saying that, Wendy, just so everyone knows, the elevator that goes from the old jail to the courts has to be replaced. It's currently not being used, but that's another elevator that is completely defunct that has to be looked at when we remodel that for the Sally Port and to bring prisoners from the Sally Port area up to the 2nd floor of the courts building. That elevator is another elevator. It's only a 2-story elevator, but it is going to have to be redone, just for the record.
But Tom, that'll all be a budget when you put together the cost for that Sally Port.
Sure. Yeah. Yes. Once we get some answers in September, we'll be able to do that. Yes.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to verify the 300,000 that I believe we approved
Yes.
was for the right elevator. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
That's just point of clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, we just had the elevator inspections done in the new courts building also. And I had to do a little sweet talking to the state inspector because he was not going to pass that old elevator coming out of the old LEC up to the 4th floor because it doesn't have all the code requirements that it needs to meet today's standards. So I told him we're not using it right now. So we're keeping it at a bare minimum if we do use it, but it hasn't been used for several months. So that's one thing down the road that we're gonna have to address, when we get the Sally port in, like you say, that's gonna have to be combined in with that price, I would think, to make the Sally port usable.
John?
Yeah, not to keep repeating myself. I want to reinforce what Tom has to say. For lack of a better cliche, we have been kicking the can down the road long time on these HVAC units and boilers and so on. Hopefully now with the ARPA and the fees from various renewable energy things, we've got enough money to replace it. As I said the other night at the board meeting, I think in 5 years, we're going to be wishing we did if we don't do it. And as far as the upper vessels is concerned, that's just the nature of the business, of the building, excuse me. We had some of it worked on a few years ago, but the way the building is constructed and the way old stone buildings are, that's just what's going to happen. And it needs to be repaired. Bad spots everywhere. So that has been something that's been on the budget or on the radar for 15 years.
So I think it's appropriate now to get, even though it's a different section of the budget. But I think in the course of this kind of conversation, also we need to add, if you look down in the proposed capital plan, the highway department buildings, and Tom, you jump in anytime you want to there. We've got plugged in $1 million there. We met out there, what day was that?
Friday.
Friday, thank you. And Bob, Wendy, Tom and I, and met with Dave Anderson, and we did walk through the building, and there's several options that we could do. The $1 million here in the capital plan is actually probably worst case. I would call it worst case scenario. We can't figure anything else out. This would be simply a Band-Aid on Dave's buildings of just reskinning them. This is not doing any improvement to the buildings whatsoever. And it was pretty obvious to me, to my eyes, that would be $1 million thrown away. And because there's major work that's been put off, again, going back to your comment, John, we've got major capital improvements that need to be done in the highway department. So we came up with kind of a three-pronged idea coming out of that meeting, one of which is a new greenfield site for the highway department. Because the problem with the site where they are right now, they are hemmed in. There's really no way to expand. It's possible that you could shoehorn a new building in there that would be adequate for the future needs, because we're not just looking at current needs, we're also looking at future needs of the highway department. So we could be looking at several $1 million of expenditures to get a new greenfield site put into place, or even a major reconstruction effort down there. So I want you guys to be thinking about now, if you can see in the capital, we start off with a balance of $6 million just in this year. If we fund all the requests, and you've heard Tom and Greg talk about, this is not pie in the sky. These are things that are going to have to be spent. This takes, just in this fiscal year, this takes us down at the end of fiscal year 23, takes us down to $2.3 million. At what point, especially in light of depending on what we do with the highway department, how much of this stuff do we, where instead of trying to do this through basically hand to mouth or through cash flow, when do we start thinking about bonding out some of these larger capital projects?
So
Go ahead,
Jim,
Tom.
Jim, I'd like Rick to talk through some of the talking points. Him and I were talking the other day, and he had some good thoughts on the bonding thing, and with some of these major things of not using capital. Rick, could you elaborate on what you and I were talking about?
Well, it's just kind of what we talked about there last Thursday too, Jim. I mean, at some point in time, we're we're gonna basically, if we fund all this stuff, we're gonna drain the capital budget, and we've seen the forecast of revenues and expenses and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, to be fiscally responsible and probably need to sit together and get someone to spearhead how much total money it's gonna take to get all the buildings up to code and up to snuff and whatever, and then look at possibly going to bond and saving some of this money for things that are unforeseen down the road. So it was just kind of a general comment, but yeah, I mean, we're cutting our capital budget in half. If we
I
fund
think,
all
I
this
think
stuff.
I think it was a great point, Rick. And I think it's something we have to look at because again, getting rid of all our capital and not having cash on hand or something for reserves, I'd rather have a payment on a bond, knowing what every month that we're going to spend on something to actually get our buildings done now. Yeah, we're going to pay the price, but it's going to be over how many years. I just think it's a great idea because of the forecast of what's going to be in the capital. So I think it's a really good point and something you guys obviously, and we as a board need to really consider this.
So I guess to start that conversation, as far as what is our authority as far as the board goes without being able to bond? What's our bonding ability before we would be forced to go to referendum?
I'd have to research that. I don't know the answer to that.
I was gonna say the same thing. I have no idea, but we could look it up.
Yeah. I would say that if
And
you
the
are,
reason why I ask is because if we're able to bond a certain amount of debt out without going to referendum, and that may be all we need to do, going to referendum there's time constraints,
right,
it takes a
exactly.
lot of time to do that. So we have to plan that as far as how we handle this year's budget.
yeah, we would have to, I think we'd have to have a conversation with a finance company that does some of that because they're going to be looking at how much available revenue that you have that you could probably do some general obligation bonds, and you may be able to do that without going referendum. Again, have to do some research.
John?
Back in the day when we were considering building a new jail, they did a study on how much the county could bond out. And we bonded whatever we did for the jail. I don't remember the exact amount, but we were eligible for substantially more than that. Due to the fact we have virtually no debt, things of that nature. I'm not for mortgage in the future, but if we get good rates. I don't know if we can get the good rates right now with them going up like they are, but we may be able to capitalize on that too.
We'd still be, if you put that in perspective, we see the headlines of Fed taking 75 basis points, increase and whatnot. Put that in perspective. Long-term interest rates is on the discount rate is usually between 3.75 and 4.25. Commercial rates of 5.75 to 7%. Those are long-term rates that we've
Seems
all
to me
dealt
like
with,
we
and
got-
we're a long ways from that as yet.
Got the money for the jail
So-
for a little over 3, if I remember right. If I recall. Didn't we get the money for the jail for a little over 3?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
But at that time,
The world's changed very recently.
But even at that, we could probably still get bonded for under 5. Yeah,
Jim?
and it depends.
I mean, I guess my point is that, look at the long term for like buildings and facilities, save you like your dump truck replacements and squad cars and stuff, and continue to fund that on the capital projects. But the long term infrastructure, buildings and stuff like that, probably need to pull that, set it aside, and maybe save some of this money for rainy day fund. But if we can.
That as we've gone down this road, I've been more and more uncomfortable with us spending these larger amounts, and it really doesn't matter to me whether it's ARPA money or what, but we need to be looking at the bigger picture instead of, because even what we've been doing is still doing things piecemeal, and we've got recognized needs. And it's just a matter of and we've been reacting to the needs, but we really haven't looked forward from a long-term perspective. And I think I challenge us that we need, and I totally agree with the points you made, Rick, that this is the direction that we need to go. So I guess, and that really can put, I guess we probably should have that conversation or have that direction to staff that we need to be exploring those options.
And that'll probably help us decide whether we fix like the highway department building, or look at perhaps building a new one. I mean, what our capabilities are, whether we got to go to referendum or not, or I guess if we can get an answer to how much we're capable of bonding, that helps us answer some of these questions.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's exactly what you'll need to do first, is like in anything, when you're going out, you got to go find out what is your limit that they would give you without going beyond that. So without the referendum. So what would be the value? We'd have to talk to a financing company to give us that information. A bank.
Is there guidelines statutorily that we could look up and get a quick overview of based off?
When we did that, when we took a look at that, when I was on the school board, that was, we had to go, that was done by the bonding company. They took a look at what our debt was.
Like Park District, they just bonded that facility up there for $3 million. And they didn't go to referendum on that.
Right. So
If you
when they
have
do
the money,
that-
you aren't going to necessarily have to go to a referendum. The question is whether or not you have any money and anybody will lend you anything based on the amount of revenue we currently have.
Correct. So you want to go to what Paul's suggesting, because they will give you all the options that you have. They'll lay that out.
They'll give you basically, here's your top level, whatever value that is. They'll tell you, here's what you can afford right now today, based on your balance sheet, your revenue, your expenses. Here's what you can afford.
Is that what it is? The first Tuesday of every month?
Say that again, Tom.
I'm sorry. I sneezed.
Oh,
Oh,
Here we go, good question.
So that would give you an idea of the value. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10. I don't know, right? But they'd give you that value, and then you guys could go from there. Hey, then you could go beyond the thought of, do I need to go to referendum?
And the other thing I would say as a, just because they're going to give us a $10 million limit doesn't mean we spend $10 million. I think we need to find out what we can spend and actually go get what we need and forecast it a little bit. So we're not just doing a pie in the sky. And I understand what you're saying, Paul. I just don't want to go after 10 million if we only need 5.5 million or 6 million, that, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I wasn't expecting that you guys would take extra money. No.
Well,
Do I hear consensus on the part of the committee? Would you like me to follow up with some agency that can start giving us some preliminary answers to our questions on that?
Yep.
And I would, if they can, there is such a thing, a quick overview, basically, because we're kind of up against a time frame here, getting the budget passed and
Right,
everything
and we
else.
don't want to make any commitments at this point. We just need preliminary, high-level information. Agreed.
John.
You shouldn't have too much problem finding an agency that will do that, because it's been only, 4 years ago we did this for the jail. And they came up with our bondability, I guess is what you would want to say.
There's lots of companies out there that do that and worked
Absolutely.
with several of them. So
We have one on file down there in the treasurer's office, probably from the bonding of the jail. So it's,
So with that said, it's about a minute after 10 o'clock. Your next hearing was at 10 o'clock. Do we have any follow-up questions specifically for Greg? I will get back to you on these questions regarding the
Yeah,
bond.
Tom had a question.
That was going to be my comment totally, Wendy, is that we need to put this to committee. The point of Rick and Tom, we do need to have it for our budget. but we need to move on because this is a much bigger scope, building that building that we're gonna address during budget hearings.
That's correct. But we needed to have the conversation
So we need
because
to
it is going
Yep.
to address,
limit it to
you know,
where-
we may, you know, as dire as Tom paints the picture, and I have no doubt that he's correct in regards to the new courts building. If we can put that off, you know, a particular point in time, you know, until we get this bigger question rolling. So. Okay, well, Greg, thank you. Appreciate the time. Tom, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We're pretty gentle, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't have to buy any Band-Aids at least.
Anybody need to take a break? All right, let's take a 5-minute break.
Invent the wheel. Agency is trying to do that. They don't listen. What can I say? Yeah.
No, I couldn't remember where you were, whatnot. I just moved to. Yeah. We needed to teach you.
And, you know, I had Hinkler on that.
As David.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, that's gonna be the fun one. That's when we have all the public safety. Yeah.
So for those of you that are still in the room, if you want to find your place, I can point you in the right direction. Obviously, you're going to be in the resource folder. The fiscal year 2023 budget. So I went the wrong way, didn't I? Got it? Did you find it? Yeah. So there's a folder specifically labeled for the health department. If you want to find yourself in.
Okay. Oh, I saw it.
Where you were at.
Shouldn't have been, yeah.
It's under the 01 general folder.
I'm trying to get out of the page you're on. There's nothing allowing me to.
Dang, I hate it when that happens.
You did it once before,
I am
remember?
tired of these things doing
Back
that.
and it doesn't have, that's where I'm at. But I found mine. Like you can't get out.
Okay, I'm not the only one then. It's not. Oh, 5 foot. Sorry. I think it's been, yeah, what? Mine's a 4 that we took 4 off.
Anymore.
Mine is what-
Oh, it's
Ladies'
just
lunch
loading.
together.
And that's isn't stolen. Any updates in, anything that's.
Well, when they feel better, it's not just me. Escape or pizza or something.
Mine just did the same thing.
Hold on.
Well, I don't see you anymore,
Okay.
so you may have had it for a while.
All right, yeah, because
But no, I don't.
Where do you go to here? This one says this one mine comes up.
coming back out of this.
So where are we at for Kathy's budget?
So you need to be in the O1 general folder.
Excellent.
You see that in the fiscal year
Okay,
2023, and then
right,
click in
yeah.
there.
I thought you said that. Yeah, it's the-
Well, it's in that, and then in there, you see the health department budget. Do you see
Right.
that? All right,
Right,
there you
yeah.
go. That's where you need to be.
Yeah, I got it. I thought I just heard you say that.
You know.
Yes.
You guys get it? Get it?
No,
No.
Rick's gonna get it in a minute or we're gonna bounce it off the desk. I think it fixes it.
I have texted Jonathan. If he comes up, we need to get him to tell us what he's doing, if he's just restarting it or what he's doing to get us out from underneath that, because it's a glitch that keeps happening.
Somehow.
You just checking, so I running out of pen, aren't you?
Yeah,
Okay, what should this be doing? Resetting it?
we can double click it and it's just like a cell phone.
Can I-
Yeah, and
Yeah.
iPhone.
Okay, see, you boys, your eyes still, right? I don't know, I still.
I do Samsung.
Back to what it is.
It's like the,
Can't go back. Where's the back button?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, so you just double clicked it out there. Okay, well. And then here,
I tried to redo
budget. No,
documents, this one,
budget,
now general up at the top. And then health department folder at the top. Click on that, there is just.
Wendy, we did get it. Wendy. Wendy,
Got the technical difficulties.
Wendy, we got
Oh,
it.
I'm good.
All right,
Rick kept hitting the reset, or not, I don't know what you call the button on the right.
and it just came back.
Double, well, double clicked it a dozen times. We finally, not seem like it's the way it should be.
It should be, and actually, I think we've got a help desk ticket in to them. Mr. Chairman, anytime you're ready, I think we are ready. Yeah, we're rolling.
Thank you.
We never stop. Yeah.
All of our trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
Reserved for prosperity. Okay, 10:10, we're back in session. And,
Hey, Jim, microphone,
kind
please.
enough to be here with us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kathy is kind enough to be with us here this morning to go through her budget. So everybody, now is everybody on board?
Literally, are you on
Literally,
board?
are you on board and on you on board with the, where we need to
Yes.
be? Yes, yes. Doug and Tim are still working.
Just for the record, I share your frustration, Doug. I really do.
Rick will get it. Rick will show you what to do.
Well, not only did it lock up on me, and then I had to, it kicked me completely out. I had to put all my authorization back in with email and password and all that, then get back, then I went and opened a folder and it locked up again. So I don't, there's a glitch. Are we communicating with onboard?
Yes, although I'm not sure if it's an onboard thing or if it's a tablet. I'm not clear on that, but yes,
Oh, yeah.
the two aren't compatible, maybe. I don't know.
When it works, it's wonderful. That's what-
It really does. Well, it's still preferable than having the stack of papers in the binder and
That's because that shows our age. Though, Jim.
I know it.
Make your notes there. You can still, I know you can put them in here. But we don't. It's a learning
Hey, speaking of
process.
that, as long as we are still distracted.
That's what yes, yes.
So.
This one here. Yeah,
Absolutely. Okay, is everybody up to speed? Are we ready to go? All right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Humphrey. Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, what format are you using this year? It varies sometimes. Am I going through line by line or are you gonna ask questions? How have you been doing these?
That's really up to you. If you want to highlight, so we have your proposed budget in front of us. As we go through, if there's things that you have questions on, or if there's points that you want to make, you know, I'll let you know. We'll just go through it that way.
So for the budget overview, Kathy, we did stick to the things that, you know, had to, you know, some sort of a change. There's something like Jim said that you just want to highlight.
Sure. The first several lines are simply projections based on, you know, what we've done in the past or what we've done in this current year. There are a couple, maybe about halfway down the COVID mass vaccination fee. That grant is ending 12/31. When we get down to starting with Well Woman Grant, that line on down, those are not projections, those are actual awards that we know that we're getting in FY23. And on the other page, the top several are also FY23 awards. The IDPH influenza vaccine grant, which is on page 2, several lines down, that was just a one-year thing and it ended June 30th. That's why we didn't have anything in the FY23 budget. The IDPH COVID crisis grant finishes 12/31. So, oh, I'm sorry, that's the response grant right below that. That ends 12/31. Crisis grant ends next June. So all of our COVID grants will be wrapping up here, either at the end of the year or the end of next June. Let's see. There's nothing really significant in terms of expenses. I don't think that would vary much from year to year. I would point out that our estimated ending cash balance and beginning and ending is right around the 6-month mark. So I know you wanted us to bring that down a bit, and I think we haven't. I really am comfortable with 6 months, but not so much any less than that. I'd get a little anxious. Yes.
Okay, so last year you had a miscellaneous revenue of 400 and some thousand, it says.
Yes.
You know what that was for?
Is that the ARPA?
Yeah, that's the replacement of the levy coming from either, which is probably not going to come from ARPA now, which is going to end up coming from the general fund.
That was the game we were playing last year with the ARPA money back and forth.
This is my, my understanding last year that we looked at the balance in this at 800,000 and we had talked about taking off 100,000 off of that. And then we did some different things to transfer the money in and out.
That is 100. Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's what's reflected in that 400,000 in miscellaneous revenue.
But the end result for this cash balance doesn't get reduced by the 100,000. It still keeps it. Right
No,
there.
we
Or 800,000, I'm sorry.
eliminated $500,000 levy and we only gave back $400,000 in either ARPA or general fund transfer in. So this is going to be 100 short.
beginning balance is still at basically 800,000.
No, it was 900 last year. She had about 900,000 in there
That beginning you see there is a projected beginning balance
for the end of this year.
Yeah, for
Right.
20.
No, yeah, I understand.
So it's 100 less than the 900 that was in there last year.
I'll have to go back and look at my, because I believe it was at 800, but I could be incorrect in that, so.
Well, I think what you're thinking, Rick, is because there was a little bit of confusion in regards to, I think Kathy, you were thinking your cash balance was going to be a little lower and end up being higher. And there was just some fuzziness there that I think, last year at year ends, that got all resolved and reconciled is my
I
understanding.
just remember it was a two-step process. We started out, we were going to reduce it by 100,000.
Yeah.
And then we ended up taking it completely out, and then we're going to transfer it back into the general fund is my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, so. As far as for this year, for that projection of the 800,000, that's probably, as I look at this is probably going to be, it's fairly conservative. Because we've got revenues of 921 in health department revenues. The fiscal year 22 budget is 1.4, almost 1.5. So we're just halfway through the year. So,
That's probably 7 months out of the year.
oh, okay.
So
So-
7 out of 12, 7 months out of 12.
So Jim?
Yeah.
I mean, the way we currently stand, are we still looking at a deficit of 100 and some thousand?
Coming into this morning's, yes, until we start making changes, the numbers that we're showing with the projections that Paul made, 172,000 in the hole.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, we've made a couple of changes since then, and the most significant was putting $100,000 contingency in there that was talked about last time. So now you're actually like 270 in the hole.
Good point. Forgot about
That's the only change.
yeah.
There's a few other tweaks of, but they don't amount, I mean, they kind of offset each other, and we can talk about those later.
I don't think I'm following.
It's the general budget overall, not your budget specifically. Sorry.
So Kathy, did you go up in head count in this year's budget?
Actually, we're less because our all but one contact tracer are finished.
Okay. Oh, and that's why your part-time has gone down.
Well, they were contractual, but we did move, I think, 2 nurses from 4 days a week to 5 days. And so our only part-time staff we have now are our very part-time cleaning person and our physician assistant. So there, those 2 that moved from 4 to 5 are now in full-time rather than part-time.
Okay, I'm just saying we've got increase of from last year's budget of 698 6 to 18,760.
Yeah, there are different factors. One being that when our longtime nurse practitioner retired after 30 some years, we brought on a physician assistant, and in order to hire anyone, I had to pay more than we were paying our former person. Actually, I brought her in a little more than I was making after 19 years, but I had to do what I had to do to get a provider.
Just to give Rick the information he was asking for earlier, their fund balance at the beginning of this year was $950,000. Rounded.
I also don't believe the increases that the county board granted were included in the FY22 budget, but they obviously are reflected in FY23 as well as the upcoming raise that's been approved.
Yes, that's the case with any of our departments. At the time the budget was set, that money was sitting over in contingency for the salary raises.
Any questions for Kathy? Larry?
The food permits, what
Yes.
did we do with those? I thought we did it 2 years.
We did do 2 years through ARPA. So the health department, year one will be this fall when they send out their permits. And then year two will be 2023.
And that's already been approved. The 1 year's been approved. If we're going to do that again
You actually approved 2 years.
did
so-
we? Oh, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. I'm sorry.
The 70 here, and I know it's a lot more than that.
I think we figured 120 for both years. So I think we figured 60 per year. But again, we made that caveat that you don't know from year to year what businesses are going to need a permit. So that is going to fluctuate a little bit, but we allocated 120.
And no, no,
Unless
not,
they, I'm sorry, I said unless we raise the fees.
yeah, which I understood last year that not to do that. The reason we put 70 is simply because we've been having quite a few more seasonal permits. So based on what we've been doing.
Rick?
So shouldn't we reflect, because the actual payment's going to be coming from the ARPA committee or the ARPA funds, shouldn't that be reflected in the revenue side of, or is it?
I don't know that it is, Rick. That's a good question.
Repeat that question.
So the ARPA committee, the full board determined that we were going to, from ARPA, grant the health department permit fees each year to the tune of 60, or we allocate 120,000 is essentially what was approved. So that is going to be revenue they won't get from the citizens, but they will get from ARPA. So Rick's question is, should that not be reflected somewhere in the budget, maybe an other line item for revenue?
Revenue coming in to offset the fees?
But actually, it
Should be a line item in
Right,
ARPA,
expense.
not in their budget, because
They're
we're,
still- Yeah, they're still, okay, they're still going to collect, you're correct, yeah.
yeah, she's still going to collect the revenues. It should be an expense line item in the ARPA fund.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
No. Kathy, anything you want to add further?
I don't think so. I just, we greatly appreciate your support through the levy, and I hope you see the long list of grants. We always try to find other funding to provide our services. We don't just wait for the levy. And just a reminder that some of that levy, about 35% comes back to the county board in, the form of IMRF, health insurance, those types of things. So, but we do appreciate the support.
All right. Very good. Thank
Another
you.
question.
Yep. Go ahead, Rick.
The rent, is that the reimbursement back to the county for the?
Yes.
Has that gone up recently or?
Well, for a while, we didn't pay any once the
Right.
bill, and then I think it was kind of considered a combination utilities, but it was named rent.
Yeah, we just slapped it under rent, but it covers utilities and, some things like that. Yeah.
I think it was implemented a few years ago. I don't know exactly when.
Yeah, I think it was about the time I got here, a year or so. Yeah, 3-4 years maybe.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Congratulations, you're back on schedule.
Isn't that amazing?
IT is supposed to be next. I don't see him here.
Not doing fast enough. Huh?
I think you were fine. Because you didn't go to IT. Your original.
Oh, yeah. I can't get out of it because I don't have exposed.
Nothing. Nothing for the record.
Okay, you want to bring up, You want to do the talk?
No, go ahead.
No, I think you should talk about it.
Are we that, we're not ahead of.
So a couple of adjustments I'll share with you to your schedule.
See, now I'm locked out again. What? Right here. Yeah, but you still need to. See, I'm locked.
So while Jim's collecting himself, a couple of adjustments to your schedule. The Health Insurance Committee met yesterday and they have a recommendation to pull forward to this committee for health insurance. I thought it would behoove this committee to actually hear from the consultant that you all hired that took us through a 6-8 month process for health insurance. So he has been scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m. to give a presentation of the research that he did. And he will walk you through the data he collected, including the bids we received. And then we will share with you what the recommendation is coming from the Health Insurance Committee. So as a result of the fact that we've plugged in that consultant at 9 a.m. on Thursday, I asked Paula and Paul if they would mind going out of order and addressing you today if we had any free time. And we do, because we're waiting for Paul Gorski to get here. So I'm gonna, Jim, if it's all right with you, I'll tag it off to Paul and Paula for their budget.
All right, so are you guys all in?
So you're in the folder of general, and it's the general detail, the first folder.
We have 11.
And it should be right, oop, right there, right there. Okay, so really the only thing different in our budget year over year is gonna be the that salary line that's highlighted. And that basically is the delta, but in terms of a replacement for the chief deputy or myself. And what that really reflects is the cost of hiring a financial analyst to help with the treasurer's office and the analytics inside of that. There's also in your resource folder was a justification for this, and some of the highlights of that are the items that in the last 4 years, and I'm going to give Paula the kudos for this, the changes that we've made, and really it's more of the analytics that we never had in the office. We've reduced the bank statement accounts from 117 down to almost 40. Thanks. I've got my producer in my ear, giving me some information. And then the reporting that we've done. I mean, in the past, I remember the first year I was here, we gave you guys a cash balance sheet, and that was about it. I mean, every month, oh, here's where we're at cash balance wise. There wasn't really any, oh, here's the revenue that we're seeing, here's what we're projecting for the year. So there's analytics that's going on there. Well, obviously there's going to be a change in administration in the next few months. And I will be moving into that role, which leaves a void in the treasurer's office. But what you really want to look at is long-term, what do we want to do with this office, and what do we want to do for the county? Really, it's not this office, it's really the county. How do you guys want to see your analytics? How do you want to know what's really happening with your finances? What do we need to do to make it better? So in that is hiring a financial analyst, because really the treasurer's role statutorily has nothing to do with that. And maybe in the past, that's why that's all you got was a cash balance sheet, right? But I'm not going to be here forever. And I know, just based on our head count and our people, you really don't have the analytics behind Paula and myself. So that's the change that you see in the budget is a year over year change, but it's really, you can add we're not adding headcount, but we're adding a different person, which really only increases your budget about 40K. That's the impact. Yeah. So I kind of joked with Jim one day and I said, I'm one heartbeat away from not being here. And I say that jokingly, but it's also a health risk I have. So we need to look at bringing in a professional, in my mind, to keep that office in good standing. Rick, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I fully support the way of thinking. Again, you never know who you're going to get when you go to election and whether they're qualified or not for that position.
I absolutely agree with that.
And so my question, I guess, is more, I remember seeing the document, but I can't remember right off the top of my head. What was the offer for the starting pay for this new
What we're
position?
looking, this new position, somewhere between 75 and 80 probably. And yeah, and I did a little research just in the Dixon area to try to see, you know, with the experience, maybe 4 or 5 years of experience, some supervisory experience, what some of the local areas are paying. And that's going to seem, that's probably where we're going to land. So
the stipend that's in here, is that for the chief deputy position as well, or no?
No, that's a payroll stipend
Because
to run payroll.
are you not receiving a stipend?
I am. And so what we'd basically be doing is eliminating, well, this person would replace the chief deputy, but that stipend value is in the 40 to 45K increase. So in other words, what I make today would be an increase of about 40 to 45K over what I make. And that includes my stipend.
And like I said, I fully support this. I guess I just wanted to discuss or talk about the option of, since, you know, your qualifications are very good. If we bring somebody in and they're going to be studying under you for, you know, hopefully 4 years or maybe longer, who knows? Are we maybe a little on the high side? I mean, I understand you want to pay people and quality people. I just, like I said, I don't want to get in a situation where we're starting out creating another high level position, duplication of qualifications, for example.
Yeah.
We're fortunate enough right now to have you in that position, and down the road we might not, but the hope would be that we find the right person that can keep them here in the long term.
And that's kind of what I would, my thought process was, as you kind of pointed out, you never know who you're going to get to run or who you would get in there. Could that person replace me as the next treasurer? Absolutely, they could. But the thought process is maybe they are more in line with replacing an administrator in a role, you know, future down, instead of replacing me. But that role in and of itself, if I wasn't here and that person stayed in that role, then you still have the analytics, you still have the continuity that you have today for that office and for the county. Really, it's, I say, when I say the office, I mean the processes that go on behind the scenes. But Liram, you had a question or a comment?
I really do have a stupid question.
No, go ahead.
On into the future with the department heads saying that, hey, the guy underneath me gets a little bit more than I do. Are we gonna have a hard time electing anybody after that, or is that we can just elect anybody as long as we got the number person here?
Does
Does
that's
that make
kind
sense?
of, that's kind of the point would be to have, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
jumped right in here. Can't stand it. Give me the phone. Give me the microphone.
Where is that? Under what folder is the
It's in the general folder. If you go down, if it's on the general one, then it's
there
a,
you go.
yeah,
I
and
got
it says justification for finance director. So this position we would look at this as a permanent addition to the county as a financial position. The treasurer it doesn't really matter who you elect at that point.
If
And,
you have
and,
that.
and are you gonna have a hard time electing people? No. You'd have a hard time electing somebody who has, well, you have the problem now of electing somebody who's gonna have a professional background. Because you don't pay anywhere close to what somebody with an accounting background can make, even in this community right now. So this, you're 30,000 under where you would need to be to hire, to get somebody to run on a professional level normally, unless they're looking at retirement and this is a community service project for them, which is what you got right here.
We're an exception, but like we'll get some other department head that will say that, I guarantee you. They'll come in and they'll say, hey, I need more money than.
Well, they already make 20 to 30,000 more than what I make. I mean, there's so many department heads that are making at least 20 to 30,000 more than what your elected officials are making.
That's what I'm saying. We're not gonna get lucky again after you guys retire.
So,
And that's why
so,
you
but
vote this way.
it doesn't really matter who runs then, does it? Because you've got a professional person in here running the show as it is. And yeah, you're going to be able to find somebody who's going to run for this position. They're not going to be qualified, but this is a decent position if you don't have some of those skills. I mean, this is a decent salary for somebody with little to no skills in this community. I don't think you're going to have a problem finding somebody to run. The problem is finding somebody to run who's qualified.
And so Laram, I'll follow up with also what she alluded to and didn't quite state is no matter where you set the salary, you're going to have somebody else that complains about it. And it could be another department head. It could be somebody within the office. There's always going to be that. I think the question you have to ask yourselves is, do you want that stable, professional, financial analyst position for the benefit in
Right.
particular of this committee, but the board in general? And are you willing to put up with the potential people that are going to complain? Because they'll complain even if you don't create this position. They're going to complain.
And I'm guessing that all of your non-elected department heads right now, you are paying market value for, or they wouldn't be working here.
So in terms of the treasurer's office budget, that is the one key focus. That's the one key thing that changed year over year. And that was the one topic that we wanted to address with you and get your feedback and your questions on early in the process.
So once we would approve the budget, with this component in it, it would be, then the posting for the new position would go out. So we'd be doing that in December.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that we would need to hire somebody before I move on. And if we had a month or two where it was just myself and Samantha and Debbie down in the office, I don't see a problem with that. I think what we really want is we want the right person. So I don't want to rush this through and say, I've got to have somebody as I start in the 1st of December.
And so that's kind of my question, Paul.
Yeah.
Because if it takes, because I don't want you to rush and I want you to find the right person.
Exactly.
So should we do a little bit anticipation? If there's a consensus here among the finance committee that this is what the direction we want to go, do we give you authorization, go ahead and get the job posted and start the search, now so
Sure.
that
Yeah, definitely.
not waiting 3-4 months into the fiscal year to get somebody hired.
Yeah, and that would absolutely be great. I think you could make it as let's say you guys all agree and we want to get this started and this is 1st of August and we could post that by 1st of September, call it, right? But with the anticipation that the job start is really not until our fiscal year starts. So December, but that also gives the right person time to get through whatever they need to get through. So we're not scrambling. But yeah, that would be great, Jim, where if I could have the last quarter of the year as a chance to talk to potential candidates, and find the right one. And, there's a few that I could think of, but there's probably a bunch out there that I don't know that we may want to take a look at. As a matter of fact, I know I do. So yeah, your point being, I absolutely agree.
thoughts from the committee on that issue?
You say we are eliminating the chief deputy position, right?
Well, when I
So
say
what's
that,
the difference between,
when I say that, this financial analyst would de facto be type of the chief deputy role. It's just that all of that, yeah, and much more. It's just that the role of that would be absorbed into that financial analyst role.
So Rick, I guess from a contract standpoint, is this person going to be taken out of the union agreement? And does that need to be addressed with
Yeah.
them and eliminate that position? Or are they going to come back and say, well, now you need to fill that position as well?
No, we do need to talk to maybe the union, but maybe to give you guys some insight to the union. And there's probably some discussion still going on there. The treasurer's office employees no longer pay union dues and basically have worked with the Janus rule, if you will, with the labor union and said, we basically have said, we're no longer in your union.
Is there an official decertification? Or?
That has to come from the union, that we're still having that discussion, but we no longer pay those dues. So once that discussion happens, that's kind of going to be a moot issue.
And then just one other quick question, and it's minuscule, but in the 22 budget, there was a stipend of $42.90 and it's gone up to $4,500. I guess my question is if Paul's stipend was reflected in there, or if that was in his salary line item, or
My stipend for chief deputy is in the salary line. And
So those stipends are when the staff took over the payroll process down there.
No, I know, I understand. I guess I'm trying to attribute whether that was actually taken out or if it was reflected in the 22 budget correctly, or I'm just, the dollar amount is actually increased for 23.
Stipend. Yeah, so that 4,500 probably needs to be only 1,500 or 33,000. Because there'll only be two people. 3,300. Yeah, that actually could be tweaked a little bit and drop
That's what I
down.
was trying to get to. is
Yes,
if-
you're correct. You're correct. Didn't think about that when we were throwing those numbers out there.
So the 3,300 would be what?
This payroll stipend that the staff get down there. When payroll left the clerk's office and came to the treasurer's office, there was a stipend given to them to process that payroll because it was an additional new work that they took on and an expertise that they had to learn.
Okay.
So the
And
two
that
remaining
goes-
staff members, it's not, the stipend won't go to this financial analyst or finance director, whatever you want to call them. But the
Gotcha.
two staff down there receive a little bit of a bump because they took on additional responsibilities a couple years ago.
Gotcha.
Doug? Go ahead, Doug.
No, that. Mhm. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's already in there. Right, right.
No, this was always in your number that you saw.
Nope, you're right.
And it's a separate question, and I guess kind of you brought it up, but do you know, is there anything happening with the clerk's office then? Or are they going to continue in? Now they're down to what? How
They
many-
have decided to stay.
Okay.
Yes.
How many members did they have?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Paul? Paul?
They
seats
have
over here.
8 members here in this building, but then you got to remember.
Well, that's what I'm
it-
saying. Are they going to combine
Right
that
here.
together, or just going to be a separate bargaining unit for
I
3 or
think-
4 people, or?
Yeah,
I don't think that they can because they actually negotiate. I mean, the statutory negotiates. So no, they wouldn't be confining.
It's just a question.
All right, any further questions? Now that we got Paul here, we can go into IT. Any further questions for the treasurer's office? Appreciate the discussion. I think, in my view, this is extraordinarily important. You know, we've had the super advantage, and we all know this is just reiteration, but you know, we had Paula who, with her extensive experience in governmental budgets and law there, and Paul with his experience in the private sector. We've had two people that we've enjoyed that really has brought the level of financial reporting up to a level that I don't think we've ever seen in this county ever. And it's been a huge advantage for us, and we do not want to take this backwards. So, Lauren, you had a comment?
Billy, you have to go back to work.
Oh, okay.
Before I do, are we consensus that we hire some, they can start this, or?
So really, do we need to take
Need
that
to vote, or
to
do you
the
need
full
to-
board for approval on that, or can the finance committee make that?
I think, again, since, as Paul said, he's not expending money or hiring anybody until after the beginning of the fiscal year. All he's looking to do is to be able to initiate the hiring process. So if
And-
you're
and
comfortable with
the-
that, I don't think it needs anything other than your level of comfort with this.
And the
So-
change, the actual change of that finance director is included in the budget. So when the full county board approves the budget in November, that
Correct,
gives the authorization to do that December
correct.
1. So yeah. So
Right.
everything would be contingent upon that.
Right.
December 1. fall.
Right.
As long as the
Is-
money's there, then the treasurer
I
can.
think,
move ahead.
I think we should probably have, for my comfort and transparency, we probably should have a motion and approval on that.
Not on the agenda.
Oh, gosh, you're right.
But we can do that on, no, we can't. Thursday's too late to
Thursday's
post. We
too
can do it
late,
at your
but we can do
next
that
budget
next-
meeting
next
next
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So
next
we'll,
Tuesday. So we'll
make-
put that on the agenda. Thank you
But-
for that reminder.
But
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, I think we all agree. I think putting the cart before the horse, if you get too carried away with approving a salary type situation, if we
Yeah.
have to make some adjustments here, I mean.
So
I think-
I think the approval would be for him to
Start the search,
initiate the
yeah.
search.
But I just want to put the brakes on the package and not making any offers to somebody until we get through the process of getting the budget approved.
Honestly, I think the only thing you really need to do is put it in the budget and leave it in the budget, because the treasurer has the authority to hire people based on how much money that they have. So I don't know that you need to do anything more formally than leave it in the budget and ultimately approve the budget. But as Rick says, if you start cutting and it doesn't
Well, that's
get left in
just-
there, then
I'm not saying it's gonna, but if it gets cut
I understand.
5,000, if you make an offer, you're advertising a salary range. And
it would behoove us to wait a couple more months and make sure that this is a solid budget before anybody starts moving ahead.
Yep, and I would understand.
So I guess the purpose of the motion would be just as far as transparency goes. So it would be in the minutes, it would be, there'd be a record of our giving direction to Paul to move forward with a search for a candidate. So it would still be subject to budget approval. Okay. Okay, all right, very good. Paul, you've been in the hot seat for 10 minutes and you haven't said a word. What do you know about that?
Well, I am not used to being in the same room with another Paul. Hasn't happened since eighth grade with Paul Anderson. He was much better looking than I was, got all the attention, just like Paul Bernal. So, I apologize. I had this on my calendar for August 4th at 9 a.m. So I was actually supposed to be out of the office today, but came in because Zach is out. So I'm assuming that the budget information that Paula sent me it's close, because I was going to review it today and tomorrow before Thursday. So, but the total amount of the proposed IT budget,
There
or
it
they
is.
have it as 553,371. Since it began a little over a year and a half ago, the IT budget's increased largely by moving over telephone and internet and consolidating all those costs within IT. But then again, this year, the board approved a multi-year agreement with Cindio, and you'll see that under professional services for the large part of it, in addition to other contractual services for sort of support for the phone system and the like. And then the software licensing is increased to be current with the Microsoft Office packages, security packages, and well, pretty much those two. And then website costs. Those have been the largest increases over the last year and a half. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your IT director and kind of consolidate some of these costs so you have an idea. Again, like phones and the like were all different budgets. You wouldn't have known unless you've asked somebody to pull them all together what your phone budget was. And in terms of software licensing, we working with Paula and Wendy, both professional services and software licensing, we've kind of pulled in from other areas too. So you've got a better idea of what you're paying for these very same services that might have been distributed in other line items and other departments. So over the last 2 budget cycles, this is where you've seen an increase in the IT budget. Again, the most recent increase was the contractual agreement with Cindio for infrastructure as a service, and we're continuing with the telephone.
How much is that, Paul?
It's just under $100,000. And then in professional services, I also allocated. I debated whether or not to actually go out for service support contracts for different things, or just to reserve the money for time and materials. And I plan on reserving it for time and materials. So out of that 136, we may not spend it all, but 100 is committed already to Cindio. That's under professional services.
So I get, just I'm wondering, while we're talking about this, in capital, we've got a 97,000 for hardware and software. Is this a duplication or is this?
No, that's additional hardware and software for the support other new projects coming up in the next year. And after that, future forward projections, we budgeted because state comes up with mandates, other things come up with mandates. So we budgeted, we're anticipating more and more either infrastructure or software requirements to be met going forward.
So the capital request is for what?
Again, you kind of caught me off guard. I don't have my original capital request here. So
Sorry, if you look at the capital list.
I came up here as soon as I heard you were looking for it, so.
Paul, I will take this opportunity, this lull here to say, I am sorry. We did do some juggling around. I did not realize that I originally told you the 4th. My apologies. Thanks for showing up on the fly. You're not losing your mind, but because we did do some juggling around, but I thought I got back to everybody about the revised, can you do this date kind of a thing. And apparently I didn't. So my apologies.
I feel bad. I grabbed a snapshot of the regular budget, but not of the capital here.
Yeah, I want it back though, because that's my only copy. So what I did on the capital, hold on a second, Paul. What I did on the capital list was I just added everything that's on this specific list and made it $97,000, which is a total of a bunch of detailed things on his list that seemed all very technical and that didn't really need to be outlined in detail. So there you go.
Right. For my capital, out of the largest amount is when we've upgraded some of the networks and the Wi-Fi. Some of the network switches should have also been upgraded. We have some 8-9-year-old Dell switches that need to be upgraded before they fail and to be better patched in with our existing new network hardware, and that's $54,000 worth of money, one-time for this budget cycle. And then when they first started, we had plans, and they're still partially connected, but to bring the highway department fully into kind of the Lee County network. They already have voice connections out there, but what we'd like to do is connect them to a fiber network, get them off of Comcast, and then take the money that they would invest in Comcast into paying for the support agreement to connect to the highway.
Before we get too
Sure.
in depth into that, I guess I'm looking at the approved budget for this year, capital budget for this year. You got 119,000, I think, that was in the budget for 2022, and you've only spent 18,000. So I guess just want to make sure we're not overlapping monies here.
I believe I don't know if that was the original amount that I requested for this.
That
year.
was, Paul, and that was before we went to the Syndio
Oh,
contract.
okay, that money was for actually buying computers partially one-off this year and then do a bunch next year. So working with Wendy and working with Paula, when we came up with the agreement with Syndio, the plan was to, during this budget year, take some of the unexpected costs for the Syndio contract for this year out of that capital line item. It's not a duplicate. We're actually, you approved the Syndio agreement, but our plan was to take the brunt of the Syndio funding out of that line item and some of the other capital improvements that needed to be done for that the server room across the street in New Quartz.
So the Syndio agreement includes their servers. We don't buy the equipment, they provide the equipment. Initially, Paul intended to buy equipment.
Purchase, right?
Right, and then we came up with this Syndio agreement and shifted gears. So he's right, that capital largely is intended to offset the Syndio costs this year. Because
And
that
so-
came up after or midpoint through the budget.
So
Yeah,
the
for like
22 capital is no longer needed.
No, so the 22 capital is going to be allocated towards the Syndio costs that we've got largely. I think you did have,
That's in the 23 request too, though.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm just want to make sure.
I just didn't hear you.
Well, the Syndio is a multi-year agreement.
Correct.
Now, when we approved it this year, we were like, well, we did want to come to you and ask for all the money in addition for the first year. So we would plan to take the first year money out of that capital line item. And then in subsequent years, actually budget it for under professional services.
So the annual fee is 54,000.
No, that, I was talking 2023. You're looking at 2022 capital, and that we're taking the Syndio amount for this year or through 2022 out of that line item.
But you just said in the 23 request in your operating budget is 50-some thousand for that company.
No, Syndio is $100,000 for the next 3 years
Per year. Total.
per year.
100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the offset there is number one, equipment. We're not buying equipment. It's their equipment and they're maintaining it. Secondly, the conversation that took place when we sought your approval from the board was the idea of we either need to hire another employee with a high level of skill set or we hire this company. So there's some offsets there.
Right.
This year, 2022 does look odd because we didn't plan for this when we budgeted back a year ago at this time. The Syndio idea concept came forward in the middle of the budget year.
Yeah, the Syndio stuff is essentially a lease of the equipment over a 3-year period with a low cost if we want to buy out at the end. But it also includes on-site backup and off-site backup and contractual support agreement. And that's why we tucked it under professional services going in 2023 and 2024. But for this year, we're going to pull it out of, for 2022, out of that capital item, which is
So do you have an approximate idea how much is left to pay in 22? That's going to come out of capital?
that's the Syndio will soak it all up.
So following that thought, then in the 23 budget, 136,000 professional services, 100 of that is this.
Is for Syndio.
So that only leaves you 36,000. And last year we had 50,000.
But in that part of that 50,000, 25 was going to the Syndio, right?
Just gonna make sure we had enough.
Yeah, we're also planning for time and materials really for Hvacs and a couple other companies rather than going into direct support agreements. My hoping we can keep the costs down and then actually have extra money at the end of the year. But it just as long as the phones stay up and running and reliant, we're good.
So this company, they do both computer and phones. It's all tied into one.
Syndio is our internet, is our computers and our outside lines. Hvacs is the company that installed the physical phones and helps us with support on the internal switching of it, which we haven't needed much within the last year and a half. And at the LEC, they haven't needed much since they installed them out there. So Hvacs is physical phones and Syndio is essentially our phone company for most of the lines. We still have some need for dedicated CenturyLink lines out there. So we essentially have 3 phone companies out there, 2 external and 1 handles the actual phone hardware internal. When the phones went out to bid, I believe Syndio was one of the bidders, but they had a kind of an open source, not off the shelf solution. And I believe the county went with the more commercially supported Avaya phone system that we have here. And that was awarded to Hvacs. And that was not only for the county, but for the LEC. So before the county, old courts and new courts had it. So.
Any further questions on Paul's budget? Kind of unrelated, do we have a date when the work technology upgrade starts happening in here?
Well, we've been doing different ones. We've had the firewall upgrade over 911, which is actually our firewall and our equipment. That happened on Juneteenth. Then Syndio is finished building out what they call the basic rack and the basic power supply, battery backups to the server room in Newport, which is on 2nd floor, across the street. And is it your old office or somebody's? Well, Kevin was. Oh, I know it's Kevin Lally's old office, but I believe it was maybe the sheriff's old office before that. I don't know. But the 2nd floor kind of tucked away. There's some storage back there, but we carved out a server room back there. And I was going to actually have a phone call and a meeting with Syndio this week. Confirm that they actually have the servers ready to start deploy, and then to reach out to the department heads for a schedule of who goes first. Elections being last, likely because of the election cycle, and I don't want to interrupt what they're doing. But I was going to work with Wendy and Cindy on the department heads on a schedule after I've confirmed that all the final server equipment is ready and we can start deploying. So actually our first deployment will probably be a new database that the probation department's using called Tracker. Since it's already on a Syndio piece of equipment, we just move it into that server room. But
so the upgrades to this room are scheduled for the last week in August. Again, we still don't have the microphones, so but they're going to go ahead and get the video, the cameras, the monitors, etc., and speakers all installed. So when the microphones get here, it'll be hopefully a plug and play process. last week of August is the only week we could find where we didn't have meetings this month. As Becky can attest to, I think we've got 16, 18 meetings scheduled this month alone.
Yeah, what's with all these meetings?
And IT plans on supporting all of your Zoom meeting requests and the like whenever we can. And I would encourage you, even though you don't have people maybe participating like you did during the COVID for that, but to still be broadcasting your meetings just so that they're available to people to view and maybe not have to make the truck down into Dixon for your meetings. Appreciate it. Any other questions for me? If you don't have any now, but some come up, feel free to give me a call or send me an email.
So just Paul has put together kind of a projection going forward for hardware and software in capital fund for the next 5 years. I mean, what do you see coming up? I mean, we're making all these improvements and spending all this money.
Well, we have a
Is
lot
this going
of
to be an ongoing thing?
Well, we have
or-
a lot of backlog to catch up on. If we spend the money that in the regular budget and the capital that I have presented for 2023, I expect it to see it settle down because we've rolled in planned upgrade costs through the Syndio. Okay. Now, the other thing that I would suggest, and I'll mention it now.
Are you hitching your wagon to this company?
I'm hitching it to Syndio, just like we've hitched our wagon to Hvacs for phones, essentially. Yeah. But the agreement's for 3 going into 4 years, and we can always reevaluate. But Syndio's been a long-time partner doing support in IT here in Lee County prior to my arrival. And I approve of the work that they've done, and they've had some good ideas and suggestions for us. And they also support Ogle and a number of other regional counties, local counties. But to answer your question though, one of the things I'd like to talk about, and I haven't talked to the department heads too much about it, but I mentioned it to Wendy and Paul and Paula in an email recently, was again, in terms of the consolidation of IT, you get departments putting computers into their budget, planning for their rotation and stuff. What I'd like to see for those departments that don't have pass-through money or grant money to help pay for their computers, maybe centralize the purchasing of those computers on a 4 to 5 year replacement cycle. So it's centralized in the IT budget where you can see it all in a one-stop shop, and it's planned, speaking to your 4 to 5 year plan, over a 4 or 5 year plan. That way, all the costs wind up being more stabilized and planned over a period of time. So you don't have like a lot of one-off capital requests for 1 year. You're budgeting 20% this year, 20% this year, 20% upgrades this year. And that way you can better plan going forward. And if you have a weak year financially, it allows you to say, well, we're going to cut back a little bit, but start again on the next year. So, and not wind up with 9-year and 10-year-old computers on people's desks or as your file servers, which leaves us open to security problems and higher support tickets. And
the other point that Paul made in the email that he sent us was that also assists the efficiency of IT, and that if they order a group of computers and can systematically do the installations that are necessary, it helps them be much more efficient than this one at a time when a department requests it.
plus, if we can buy 15 at a time, we can drive down the purchase cost too. So rather than one here. So.
Any other questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul, for
Thank
coming
you.
in. Hearing none. And so our next meeting date is, of course, Thursday at 9 a.m. And we'll be going over the health insurance bids. And the coroner, we've already done the treasurers and the board chair. So.
Yep.
Anyway, anything else good for the cause? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, moved by Bivens, seconded by Kitson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carried. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Just keep on going.
Yeah. You gonna order